Okay, so today you're keeping precepts, creating the causes of happiness, abandoning the causes of suffering. Is it that difficult to do? Are you suffering greatly by keeping the precepts? Do you feel like you're really sacrificing happiness to create virtue? No, it's not that hard to create virtue, is it? It's not that hard to abandon negativity. Yeah? I mean, when you just do it, it happens. And I think especially having the support of a group makes it really easy because everybody else is doing it too. Yeah, so we just we're all going in the same direction, so it makes it quite easy. Yeah, and then when we dedicate our virtue, we can rejoice at everybody else's virtue and dedicate it too, because somehow we're all in the same boat, going in the same direction together. Yeah, so this thing of rejoicing in each other's merit and dedicating each other's merit is quite a wonderful thing to do. And it creates a special bond with the other people that you practice with. Yeah, and it's the kind of bond that you can't create with people who don't have this kind of worldview. Yeah, so it becomes something quite special. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so really take the opportunity, rejoice at your opportunity. Yeah. And see that it's not difficult. Yeah? You know, because the other day when we were talking about the 3 lower realms, you know, if you contemplate these well, fear will arise, for if ripened upon you, they are indeed unbearable. Not gathering the virtuous karma that overcomes these and continuing to cultivate the fields of the lower realms. Wherever such conduct exists, spit on it. So we're spitting on it. Yeah, we're doing the opposite of it, and we're creating the virtuous conduct, you know, that creates the cause for happiness. And especially by taking precepts, we're stopping the karmic result, which is to repeatedly do the action. Okay, one of the karmic results is the result concordant with the cause, in the sense of habitually doing the action again. When you take precepts, then you're saying, I'm not going to do that. So you're cutting that specific karmic cause. Yeah, of habitually doing the same thing. And that, cutting the karmic result of habitually doing the same thing. And cutting that result is very important, because that result is actually the worst result. You know, we might think that the maturation result, you know, kind of what realm you're born into is the worst one in terms of negative karma, because like it said, if you're born into the lower realms, it's unbearable. But that only lasts for one life. You know, if you have a karma and it's ripening, you have one life or whatever, and that karma's ripened. But if we have the karmic result of habitually doing the action, then we do it again and again and again, and we wind up having many lower rebirths. So by taking the precept not to do something, we're stopping that karmic result of doing the action again. So we're stopping many, many, many future lower rebirths. Okay, so this is a special benefit you get from keeping precepts. Okay, and so similarly, you know, when you have a precept to not do something, every moment that you're not doing that, you're accumulating the good karma of not doing that negative action. Yeah, so in this room, there may be 2 people who are not, you know, stealing things, or not killing things or not lying about stuff. Yeah, because you're all sitting here, you know, you can't move and you can't talk. Yeah, so, you know, well, you can, but, you know, you're being polite. So, yeah, so for the person who has precepts all the time just sitting here, you know, not killing, not lying, not stealing, you're creating virtuous karma. Whereas for somebody else who's sitting here, they're also not doing those actions. But because they don't have a precept, they're not accumulating that virtuous karma. Okay? Because when you have the precept, you say, I am not going to do that. So that means whenever you're not doing it, you are, you know, you have that intention to do the virtuous action. Because remember I was saying the virtuous action is not only the opposite of the negative one, but abandoning the negative one. So you're saying, I have the intention to do the virtuous action of not stealing, not having unwise and unkind sexual behavior, etc., etc. So every moment that you are doing that action, you are, you know, creating that virtuous karma. Do you get what I mean? Are you getting it? Okay, when you have the intention, yeah, that I'm going to go kill somebody, yeah, if you're sitting here and you're mulling over how to kill them, you're creating some kind of negativity, aren't you? Yeah, and chances are you're going to go out and kill them very easily. Yeah, because in your mind you're killing over and over and over again, even though you're just sitting here. If you have the intention, I am not going to kill, you have that intention to do that virtuous action of not killing. And by sitting here right now in this moment and not killing, you are performing the action of not killing. Okay? So you have the intention, you have the object, you have the action, you have the conclusion of the action, because you're not killing. The not killing is, you know, is being accomplished. You rejoice at it. So, you're committing virtue all the time just by not doing the action when you have that precept. Okay? Got it? Yeah. Whereas when you don't have that precept, then, you know, there's not that intention not to do the virtuous, not to do the non-virtuous action and to do the virtuous one. So it's just, you know, just sitting here is quite neutral. Okay? So, you know, there's a lot of benefits that come from keeping precepts like this. And as you keep the precepts over time, you will feel inside of you this build-up of positive energy that comes from living ethically. Yeah, there's a definite feeling of a build-up of positive energy that occurs over time, not next week, but, you know, over time. And also you begin, and this will happen next week, is you begin to feel better about yourself. Yeah, because as you're keeping the precepts and not doing things that you know, that are motivated by negative minds, then you feel so much better about yourself, you know, because when we sit there and we have a greedy mind, and we sit there and we're thinking of how to, you know, hurt somebody's feelings, we don't feel so good about ourselves. You know, deep down, we may cover that by, oh, I got them, you know, I caused them pain. But deep down, we don't really feel good about ourselves. So when you stop doing those actions, then you feel so much better about yourself. Yeah? Does that make some sense? Can you see how that works? Yeah? And then when you feel better about yourself, you feel so much happier. Yeah? And then when that mind comes up that says, I'm such a loser, I can't do anything right, you can look at it and you can say, but I'm keeping precepts. I'm doing something right. So shut up. you say to your negative mind, yeah? There's actually one thought training technique where you give all your pain to your self-centered mind, you know? So when your self-centered mind is complaining because you're not getting what you want and things aren't going the way you want, and so, you know, when you're unhappy, you say, well, this is all caused by the self-centered mind. So here, self-centered mind, you take all the pain. Yeah, because you created the cause. This is all you're doing. Yeah, it's a very interesting technique. So you put outside, you know, that mind that is so self-critical, you put it outside yourself, you know, like you did in your discussion group, and you draw your picture, and you say, okay, you, this is your doing, you know, so just shut up. Leave me alone already. Yeah? Okay? So if you're going to vent in that way, you vent on, on your self-centered mind, on your afflictions. Getting it? Yeah. It's a very interesting technique to use. Yeah. I did that once when somebody was criticizing me. You know, somebody was just laying into me in an incredible way. And for some reason, I remembered this technique right in the middle of it, you know. And so I started to do that, you know, because my mind, usually I hate being criticized. My self-centered mind doesn't like being criticized. So this person's criticizing me. So I just said, okay, self-centered mind, he's talking about you. Yeah? You're so lazy, you do this and that, you never do this and that, you're always scheming, you're always talking behind people's back. Yeah, he's talking about you. You take it. Yeah? And so afterwards, my mind was like clear. You know, I wasn't all filled with resentment. Because actually, all that criticism was directed at my self-centered mind, because it was my self-centered mind that was responsible for me doing all the negative actions that warranted that person criticizing me. You know, even if I hadn't done those actions to him or whatever, you know, I had done things in some life or another so that he was lambasting me. So I just gave it all the self-centered mind. Yeah, I felt great afterwards. It was really nice. Yeah, instead of like, oh, he criticized me. Nobody understands me. He's blaming me for things I didn't do. You know, there was none of that. It was really quite nice. Okay. Shall we keep talking about nirvana? Okay, so there's different kinds of nirvana. So in the morning, we were talking about natural nirvana. Yeah, the emptiness of the mind. Then there's nirvana with remainder and nirvana without remainder. Okay, so that's the second and the third kinds of nirvana. Okay, in a general Buddhist way, remainder refers to our ordinary aggregates, our body and mind, which are true dukkha, the first noble truth, because they arose due to ignorance and polluted karma. Okay? So, when hearers and solitary realizers eradicate all the afflictive obscurations and become arhats, yeah, then they attain the nirvana with remainder. Okay, because they still have their body, and their body was, you know, is a polluted body created under the influence of ignorance and polluted karma. So they eliminated the afflictive obscurations. Yeah, so they're not going to take rebirth in samsara in the future. But they still have this body that they were born with. So they have nirvana with remainder. When they pass away from that life, then they shed that body that arose under the influence of ignorance. And at that time, it's said they have nirvana without remainder. okay, because the polluted body has ceased, and from the perspective of some Buddhist schools, not our tradition, but other traditions, they say that actually the continuity of consciousness ceases, because the consciousness that, you know, when you're an ordinary being, you have a body and a mind, and both your body and mind were produced by under the influence of ignorance and polluted karma. So, you know, when you attain nirvana, you still have at least the body, you know, that is polluted. Your mind isn't polluted. But then when you die, then you know, you no longer have a polluted mind. You no longer have a polluted body because you've left it. So the continuity of the ordinary aggregates stop. And they say, okay, everything stopped altogether, okay? So some Buddhists say at the time of nirvana without remainder, the continuum of consciousness of the person ceases, although the nirvana without remainder exists. Okay, but that's a little bit difficult, because if the nirvana without remainder exists, who has that nirvana without remainder if the body and mind have ceased? Okay? However, other Buddhists, like us, rah-rah, no, I'm joking, you know, but other Buddhists assert that all sentient beings will eventually attain Buddhahood, and the continuum of consciousness exists even after arhats pass away and shed that polluted body. Okay, so they say at that time, when arhats die, they assume a mental body, and they reside in a pure land where they remain in meditative equipoise on emptiness. Yeah, and then at the appropriate time, the Buddha arouses them from their meditation on emptiness and says that they need to enter the bodhisattva path and become fully awakened Buddhas and work for the benefit of sentient beings. And then they have to start at the very beginning of the bodhisattva path, even though they've realized emptiness before, because they have to accumulate the great merit that a bodhisattva accumulates. Okay, so that's why we're always encouraged to enter the bodhisattva path directly without becoming arhats first. Because if you become an arhat first and you're in your meditative equipoise for a while, then it's going to take you way longer to get to full awakening than if you enter the bodhisattva vehicle directly, even though in the bodhisattva vehicle it takes a long time to accumulate all the merit that you need to accumulate to become a fully awakened Buddha. Yeah, it's still shorter going directly into the bodhisattva path than becoming an arhat first. Okay? And also from the viewpoint of the Madhyamaka school and also the Chittamadras, there's nothing that can destroy the continuity of consciousness. So even though when an arhat dies, yeah, they no longer have the polluted body and their mind is no longer polluted by the afflictions. Yeah, of course it still has the cognitive obscurations. It's still polluted by them. But the continuum of consciousness can never end, because the basic nature of the mind is here we're talking about the conventional nature of the mind, is clarity and awareness. And one moment of clarity and awareness produces the next moment of clarity and awareness. And there's nothing that can impede that from happening. Yeah. There are certain things, like if you have a fire, you can stop the continuity of the fire, you can extinguish it. There's a cause that can counteract that continuity. But the continuity of clarity and awareness, one moment producing the next, there's nothing that can stop that from happening. Okay? So there's nothing that can make the mind stream go out of existence. So we say that the continuum of the mind is endless. It's not only beginningless in samsara, but it's endless. And when it's purified, it continues on, and a Buddha has purified aggregates. Yeah, so the Buddha has has purified body and a purified mind. Yeah, the polluted ones have been abandoned, but that doesn't mean that there's no aggregates, there's no body and mind whatsoever. Okay? Because if that were the case, then how could the Buddha benefit anybody? If the body and mind went out of existence at Arhatship, then that means when the Buddha died, he became totally non-existent and could never manifest in any forms to benefit sentient beings. So that would mean that he spent 3 countless great eons working to become a Buddha, taught people for 45 years as a Buddha, and then went out of existence. That doesn't sound right, does it? Yeah. Okay, so the continuity of consciousness continues. It's a purified consciousness. Yeah.
So, if that mind continues, like attaining Buddhahood, it's beyond words. Like do they become like after you attain Buddhahood and it continues like?
Yeah. Yeah. The mind stream continues, and then you can make infinite manifestations to be a benefit to countless sentient beings. Yeah? So when you attain Buddhahood, you don't just sit there. Yeah?
There's stories that Buddhas have different qualities, kind?
Well,
Secondly, Buddha is a Buddha that has like more advanced. Is it this continuity of mind? Is
no, all the Buddhas have the same qualities.
Oh.
All of them.
Okay.
Oh yeah? Okay, if you're a Buddha, you have the same qualities as all the other Buddhas, which means that every defilement from your mind has been eliminated. Every good quality has been developed limitlessly. So that's the same with all the Buddhas. Okay? And all the Buddhas can manifest in different forms, according to the karma of the sentient beings that they can potentially benefit. So they do that, and they do that spontaneously. Yeah. So a Buddha, when you're a Buddha, you don't have to sit there and generate a motivation every morning and, at the beginning of doing activity, Okay, I'm Buddha. Now I'm going to work for the sentient beings. Yes, I generate great compassion, even though they harm me. Yeah, No, when you're a Buddha, you don't have to go through all of that because you've eliminated any kind of obstacle to, to having that spontaneous, compassionate reaction to sentient beings.
But some Buddha has the quality of wisdom, other Buddha has the quality of compassion.
Okay. When we talk about Manjushri is the Buddha of wisdom, Chenrezig is the Buddha of compassion, it just means that the outward manifestation is emphasizing one quality. It doesn't mean that that's the only quality that Buddha has, and that Buddha doesn't have the other qualities. Okay? Because otherwise you would say, oh, Manjushri's wise, but he has no bodhicitta. If he has no bodhicitta, well, he uses his wisdom, how's he going to benefit anybody? Yeah, so you can't say that. That doesn't make any sense. So all the Buddhas have the same qualities, but the forms they appear in, emphasize different qualities in order to communicate with us. Yeah, we have to remember that the forms Buddhas assume are for the purpose of communicating with us. Yeah, they aren't forms that a Buddha has to take because of karma or under something else. The whole reason they manifest in those forms is to communicate with us, because we can't communicate directly with the Buddha's Dharmakaya mind. So Chenrezig manifests 1,000 arms, 1,000 eyes. Okay? Doesn't that indicate compassion? Yeah, Chenrezig's not sitting there like this. You know? Like this. It's like compassion. I welcome all of you. Yeah. Manjushri's holding a sword, cutting off wrong views. So you can see that there's symbolism to all their appearances, you know, in which the physical form symbolically expresses one of the qualities of Buddha. Yeah, or more than one of qualities of the Buddha. But it doesn't mean that that Buddha doesn't have all the other qualities too. Okay? And so, you know, when you meditate on one Buddha, it's not like you're ignoring all the other Buddhas. Okay? So if you meditate on Chenrezig, it's not like Manjushri's getting jealous. Yeah, oh boy, you know, they have a retreat on Chenrezig at Sravasti Abbey for how many years in the autumn, and they haven't had a retreat for me in the autumn. Well, yeah, okay, they're having a Manjushri retreat in the winter, but and it's 1 month, but that's not the same as every year doing it for 1 week. You know, Chenrezig has it better off than I do. That's not fair. Okay, you know, that's not what's going on in Manjushri's mind. And Tara isn't sitting there going, oh yeah, it's always Manjushri and Chenrezig, always the male deities, you know. It's like, oh my God, you know, all these women living here and they meditate on the male deities. This is just screwed. You know, I mean, Tara's not going like that. Okay? Yeah.
The Venerable, these are still their Sambhogakaya, so even with our obscured minds, we can mentally, it's like the Buddha's omniscient mind, we can't have any idea of what that's like. So
yeah.
The Sambhogakaya bodies are bodies that the Bodhisattvas can see, so we're mentally imagining them.
Right.
And then they emanate these Nirmanakaya
forms.
Which can come down, and even though we don't know that's them, they could be anything.
Right.
So they've got different levels of helping us, depending on where we are.
Right. Exactly. Okay. I thought I explained it before, but I guess not. Okay, so these form bodies of the Buddha, okay, when you attain it, you know, when you become a Buddha and you have the truth body, the Dharmakaya of a Buddha, you simultaneously have a form body of the Buddha. Because your whole reason for becoming a Buddha was to get a form body that you can use to communicate with sentient beings. And that a form body that can do the actions of a Buddha and lead sentient beings to a full awakening. Yeah, so the Dharmakaya is great, you know, but that's called the self-purpose. Yeah, the form body is the Buddha's real purpose, because that, you know, that's the purpose, fulfilling the purpose of others. Now there's different kinds of form bodies. One form body is called the enjoyment body. Yeah, so this is like, you know, the bodies that the Buddha assumes when they lead the when they teach the Bodhisattvas in the Pure Land. But, you know, I don't know about you, but I'm not in the Pure Land. I can't, you know, I haven't been able to locate the flight there on Google Flights. And, you know, I haven't been able to get there, so I don't have the realization. So I'm stuck here. So then the Buddha also manifests an emanation body. Yeah, so like Shakyamuni Buddha, who appeared on this earth to guide sentient beings. Okay, and then there's many emanation bodies, like I was describing the other day. You know, His Holiness Dalai Lama is very often considered, you know, like that. Of course, he doesn't admit it, and like I was saying, I thought I talked about this before. You know, the Buddhas manifest and they appear, but they don't wear name tags and they don't come in and announce themselves. And
my confusion was that when we keep saying, well, they do these bodies, but we still can't see the enjoyment body because we're not bodhisattvas yet.
Yeah.
I have to keep remembering, I have a relationship with them in other forms that I can't identify, but they're still here to help me. I don't have to wait till I'm a bodhisattva to...
Right. But even though you're meditating, you know, and you can't see the actual, the actual enjoyment body yet, you know, when you're meditating, you're communicating somehow. Aren't you?
Well, that's what I'm assuming.
Yeah. Well, look at your own experience. When you meditate on one of those deities,
if I can get the feeling in my heart, then that's where I am.
yeah, then something's happening, isn't it? Yeah.
What you're making about the air huts, their conscious subsystem, their consciousness stops versus continues, does that at all relate to arguments called Shenton and Renton?
No. No. We'll leave, I won't go into that. Okay, but no, it doesn't relate to that. Okay. So then the Madhyamakas, the philosophical school that we follow, asserts another meaning of nirvana with and without remainder. And here, remainder, instead of referring to the polluted aggregates, aggregates polluted by ignorance, it refers to the appearance of inherent existence. So nirvana without remainder is the true cessation that an Arya has during meditative equipoise on emptiness, when the mind is free from all mistaken appearances. Okay? So the mistaken appearances, the appearance of true existence, the appearance of the dualism of subject and object, that is the remainder. And so the Madhyamakas say nirvana without remainder refers to an Arya, somebody who has realized emptiness directly, when they're in meditative equipoise on emptiness, and when in that meditative equipoise there's no appearance of inherently existent phenomena, or of subject or object, okay? And so only emptiness is appearing, they're only cognizing emptiness. So that's called nirvana without remainder. Then when they arise from their meditation, because with the exception of the Arya Buddha, all other Aryas still have the cognitive obscurations, when they arise from their meditation, they still have the appearance of inherent existence, even though they don't believe that appearance. They know it to be a false appearance. So when they arise from that meditation, that's called nirvana with remainder, because it has the remainder of the appearance of inherent existence. Okay? Yeah?
So the usage of the term nirvana is funny there in a sense, because we usually think of nirvana as being liberated from psychic existence, but it doesn't fit here, because you have to be a seventh level bodhisattva.
Yeah, but there's arhats have attained nirvana, and a true cessation is a certain type of nirvana, because when you have, through the power of the true path, eliminated a certain portion of afflictions, you have the true cessation of that portion of afflictions, and a nirvana from that portion of afflictions. No, not until you've eliminated all the afflictive obscurations. Okay? Then a fourth kind of nirvana, okay, is called non-abiding nirvana. And that's the nirvana of a Buddha who doesn't abide in samsara or in the personal piece of arhatship. Okay? So arhats have attained nirvana. They've eliminated true sufferings, true dukkha, and its causes. Yeah. But they've attained arhatship. They've attained their nirvana for their own benefit. Yeah. They want to be free of cyclic existence themselves. So they aren't yet free of the self-centered thought. They still have that self-interest that is thinking of my nirvana, my liberation. A Buddha no longer has that kind of self-interest. So when it says a Buddha has non-abiding nirvana, a Buddha, like the Arhats, does not abide in cyclic existence. So like the Arhats, does not have to take rebirth in with polluted bodies and mind under the influence of ignorance. But a Buddha also is free from the personal piece of an Arhat, in which, the Arhats' nirvana was, just their own personal state of nirvana, their own personal peace. So that's why this non-abiding nirvana of a Buddha is said to be much better, much more magnificent than the regular nirvana of an Arhat. Okay. Now that leads us into the next verse. Okay. So the next verse says, your individual freedom alone is of no value. Beings of the entire three realms are your parents. Spit on those who leave their parents behind in the storm of dukkha and seek their own happiness. Okay? So this verse is saying, if we are just seeking our own happiness and practicing the Dharma just for our own personal liberation, our personal nirvana, then something's wrong. Because all the beings of the three realms have been our parents at one time or another in this endless ocean of cyclic existence. And as our parents, they have been kind to us. And if we don't have some sense of appreciation for the kindness other sentient beings have shown us, and instead just say, I can't bother with you, and go for our own nirvana, and leave them in cyclic existence, in the storm of cyclic existence, then what kind of person are we? It's like all these beings have been kind to us again and again in our previous lives as our parents, and we're totally ungrateful for everything they've done for us. And we're just looking for our own nirvana. We go off, get our own nirvana, and ciao, bye, I'm happy. Good luck, everybody. Yeah. So that's why it says your individual freedom alone is of no value. Yeah. I mean, it's of value to you, but in the big picture, yeah, how can we just practice for our own well-being alone? I mean, that's pretty selfish, isn't it? Yeah. So how do we overcome the selfishness? Because sometimes when we look at how awful cyclic existence is, we really want to get out ASAP. Yeah, and we have this strong motivation of renunciation. I want out. I want liberation. Okay, I'm determined to gain liberation. I'm done with samsara. So when you have that strong of an intention for your own liberation, yeah, there needs to be something that is very strong, that is going to wake you up and say, well, what about everybody else? Are you so important that your liberation alone is the most important thing around? What about everybody else? And so here, this verse is talking specifically about the method of generating bodhicitta that is called the 7-point cause and effect instruction. And in this way of generating bodhicitta, we consider that other sentient beings have been our parents before. Okay? Actually preceding this meditation, we try and generate equanimity so that we don't have so much attachment to friends, enemies, and strangers, so that our moods are a little bit more balanced without these really extreme emotional reactions to people of, I'm so attached to you, I can't live without you, and get away from me, I never want to see you again, and, oh, who cares about you? You know, these attachment, anger, and apathy. Okay? So we practice, equanimity to equalize these motivations and to really see that the categories of friend, enemy, and stranger are things that are just created by our mind. That people don't objectively exist as a friend, as an enemy, as a stranger, because people change categories all the time. Yeah? If they were inherently one or the other, they would never change categories. But our mind is incredibly fickle. And somebody, one day somebody does something like, oh, you go in the friend category. The next day that same person does something we don't like, they shift over to the enemy category. It's true, isn't it? Yeah, we like to think of ourselves as reasonable people, but when you look at how we think of other people, we're not very balanced. Yeah? Somebody criticizes us. Oh, they were a horrible person. Through and through, they're useless, worthless. Can't stand them. The next day, we have a flat tire and we're stranded on the highway and they come along and help us. Oh, what a wonderful person. They're so kind. Yeah? Then the next day, we don't see them at all. We lose touch with them. Who cares? We go into apathy. So, first we try and develop some equanimity. Smoothing out those very radical emotions towards other people. And then, when it says here, beings of the entire 3 realms are your parents. Our initial reaction is, wait a minute, I have one mom and one dad. What are you talking about? Well, yes, in this life we have one mom and one dad. Yeah, but at least as birth parents, you may have stepmothers, stepfathers, all sorts of other people, who are mom and dad too. But when we consider many, many lifetimes, everybody's been our parents. Okay? Everybody, because we've had beginningless lifetimes. So there's plenty of time for everybody to have been our parents. And here we're creating an idealized view of the parent-child relationship. Okay? It is an idealized view, but it also helps us to see the goodness that we receive from our parents. Okay? Because if we look at it, we did our precious human life. Without our parents, we wouldn't have it. Right or wrong? I don't care whatever else our parents did. They gave us this life, and we have a precious human life. Yeah? So that's something incredibly kind. Even if they beat us and whatever afterwards, we don't have the we are not here with the ability to practice the Dharma if they didn't give us this body and this life. Bottom line. Yeah? So that's kindness, isn't it? Yeah? And after we were born, they took care of us. Or if they weren't able to take care of us, they found other people who could take care of us. And the proof is that we're alive today. Because if they didn't take care of us, and if they didn't find somebody else to take care of us because they weren't able to do it, then we would not be alive today. But we are alive today because other people took care of us. Right or wrong? It's true, isn't it? When we were born, we couldn't take care of ourselves. You know, spend some time looking at a baby. We've been talking about babies. Yes, they're adorable, aren't they? But can they do anything to take care of themselves? Yeah. And you look at them, totally dependent on others. Totally. And to think, I was once like that. It's hard to imagine, isn't it? When you look at baby pictures, do you really think I've been like that? It's hard to imagine that we've ever been like that. But we know we were. They have pictures of it. Yeah. So we were sitting there, you know, lying on the floor, lying in a crib, couldn't even roll over ourselves. Hungry, couldn't go and get food ourselves. Cold, couldn't put a blanket on top of us ourselves. Yeah, we couldn't do anything. Yeah, we peed and pooped, couldn't even change our own diapers. Yeah, so we were all taken care of due to the kindness of our parents or whoever our parents asked to take care of us. It's true, isn't it? Yeah? And that's some incredible kindness, because if we didn't have that kindness, we would not be alive today. Hmm? And then when we got old enough, you know, they sent us to school, whether we wanted to go or not. Yeah, and they made sure we got an education. And they couldn't teach us everything, so they had teachers teach us things. Yeah, and we may have ranted and raved, I don't like going to school. But looking back on it now, aren't you glad you went to school? What would have happened if we didn't go to school? Okay? Yeah. Maybe we would still know how to talk because our parents taught us how to talk. We wouldn't know how to read and write. We wouldn't know how to add and subtract. Whatever your career is, you wouldn't have that ability to do that job if you didn't go to school, if other people didn't teach you. Yeah. Whatever talent we have, other people taught us, they encouraged that talent and ability. Yeah. Our parents made sure we got an education. And without an education, you know, we would have been lost in life. Mm-hmm. Our parents taught us manners. My mother used to say sometimes, you guys are like wild animals. Well, it's true. I mean, if you have a kid and you don't, like, train that kid and teach them manners and occasionally discipline them, they are like wild animals. Yeah? And we would be like wild animals. Except our parents had to teach us, you know, Yeah, you can't come in and just grab something because you want it. Yeah, you have to say, please, may I have it? And when somebody gives it to us, you have to say, thank you. Yeah, those are two very important skills that if we don't learn in life how to say please and how to say thank you, we're not going to make it in life. Think about it. You know, if you don't know how to say please, and instead every time you want something you just go grab it, what's your life going to be like? You're not going to have any friends. And if you don't know how to say thank you when somebody does something and helps you, similarly, no friends. Nobody's going to help you again because you're a total spoiled brat. So just teaching us how to say please, how to say thank you, how to restrain our anger and our greed, just so that we could fit in with other people and, you know how to function in society. You know, it was our parents who taught us. We didn't come out of the womb perfectly well-mannered. Yeah, because we still aren't even well-mannered now. Yeah. But our parents taught us, you know, our first introduction to ethical conduct was from our parents, wasn't it? Yeah. No, you cannot clobber another person. Yeah. You cannot hit mom and dad. You cannot hit somebody else. You cannot hit your sibling. You know? Yeah? Just, I mean, when you think about it, just basic things that enable us to live harmoniously together with other people, we were taught by our parents or by whoever our parents entrusted to teach us if they couldn't take care of us themselves. Yeah? So it's important, you know, to realize that we aren't some kind of independent person who magically appeared with all our abilities and talents. But everything came due to the kindness of other people, you know, and specifically when we were little. Mm-hmm. And I bet you all of our parents or whoever took care of us when we were young, I bet you they all have stories about how we did dangerous things. Yeah. I remember watching Osel, the Lama Yeshe's incarnation. When he was maybe 2 or 3 years old, he was at Dharamsala. You know, like all kids, he takes something, jammed it in his mouth, started to choke. Yeah. The monks and nuns are standing there, what do we do? You know, his mom walks along. It was her 4th kid. She was totally calm, picked him up by the feet, hung him upside down, whacked him on the bottom, got the thing out of his throat, put him down, and life went on. You know, she was calm as could be, but she saved his life. Yeah? Yeah? Anybody want to share a story of something you did when you were little that was dangerous? Yeah.
I was a superhero first in kindergarten, and I climbed a tree, jumped out of the tree, and broke my leg because I wanted to fly, of course.
So you wanted to be Superman, yeah, and jumped out of the tree and broke your leg. Yep. Okay. We did this one time at DFF, the group in Seattle. Somebody told this story. This is a real great one. This was Ann Moon who told the story, I think, of when she was little. You know, Sunday morning her parents slept late. So the kids, you know, decided to pretend to make breakfast. So they folded up pieces of newspaper the size of pieces of bread and put them in the toaster. And and started a fire in the house. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah. So, how many times, also were we maybe at the top of the stairs ready to try and walk down the stairs, i.e. tumble down and kill ourselves, and our parents stopped us? Yeah. Or all the dangerous things we did as kids. And then they had to teach us, no, you do not walk out in the middle of the street with the cars coming. Yeah. Yeah. So, to really think of the kindness of our parents, and that all sentient beings have been our parents and have been kind to us in that way. Yeah. And then it's also very touching, too, to think not only of human parents and how they take care of the kids, but think of animal parents. Yeah? Have you ever watched how Mama Puppy or Mama Kitty takes care of, not Mama Puppy, Mama Dog takes care of her puppies, and Mama Cat takes care of her kittens? It's really moving when you watch, because the little kittens, puppies, they come out blind. They don't know how to walk. Nothing, And she nurses them. And in India, it's especially moving to see this, because the dogs are constantly malnourished. And you can tell Mama Dog going out, you can tell she's lactating, feeding puppies, but her ribs are showing. And she's scrounging for some food, and then all the food, it goes into feeding her pups. Yeah? And it's just Mama Dog does this automatically. And Mama Cat does the same thing. Now, and you even look at turkeys, or at Cloud Mountain when I used to be there, they had peacocks. Yeah. And you watch, when the turkeys come out in the springtime, when they hatch, we have these itty bitty turkeys, And Mama Turkey is teaching them how to peck, yeah, and where the food is, and, go after Venerable Semke, because she'll feed you. Look for her. Yeah. So, and then at nighttime, what happens? Mama Turkey sits on top of her chicks. Mama Peacock sits on top of her chicks. Yeah. Even though it's dangerous for her, because the fox, the coyotes can come. But she sits on top of her chicks to protect them. And then we have grouse. That if you've walked in the forest, sometimes the grouse, this time of year, they'll fly out. And a mama grouse, after she has her chicks, she will pretend to be wounded, so that any coyote or, wildcat or whatever will chase her instead of going to the nest after her chicks. Yeah. Turkeys do that too? Yeah. Yeah.
She'll make her wings on the ground.
Uh-huh.
So she looks injured, so you go.
Her, yeah. Yeah. So, willing to sacrifice their lives for their babies. And then you think, I've had that relationship with all sentient beings before, where they've been willing to sacrifice their lives for me when I was a turkey chick. Yeah? Or a grouse chick. Yeah? And so, you really think of that. And mother human beings too. I mean, they will do anything for their kids. If their kids are in danger, if their kids are sick. Yeah. I once asked one mother about it, and she was telling me, even when you change your kid's diaper, you don't see their poo as really dirty and disgusting. Somehow your kid's poo is, you know, you're a mom, you're nodding, yeah? So, you know, you just do it happily. Your kid wakes up screaming in the middle of the night because they're hungry. For 2 years they do this and you don't have sleep. And you get up and feed them. You know, now fathers are starting to do this too. Yeah? So, you know, sleep deprived for years. Yeah, but happily getting up in the middle of the night to feed the kids. Yeah, and so thinking about that, whoever took care of us when we were young, yeah, they kept us alive and they did this, even at their own expense, even though it was uncomfortable for them. So when we think about that and that kindness, you know, that all these sentient beings have shown us when they've been our parents, you know, can we actually just think of our own Dharma practice and our own liberation? No, we can't. Yeah, we can't do that. Yeah, automatically the feeling comes of, I want to repay this kindness. I've got to repay this kindness. Okay. So we'll leave it there today. Something to think about.